All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to this podcast or video or whatever it is. In this, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to detail and go through every presidential action that Donald Trump is doing. And if you didn't know, there's a great website called whitehouse.gov where all of the president's actions are detailed and cataloged and transcripted into briefings, statements, fact sheets, presidential actions, executive orders, remarks, proclamations, all that. So today, as I'm recording this, it's January 29th. And in this first one, I would imagine that, we're going to get something like halfway through Inauguration Day. And then eventually we will be catching up as the executive orders slow down and hopefully things become a little bit less crazy. But I'm going to start here with President Trump's America first priorities. So this is the first thing that he put out after the quote unquote inauguration. As you'll see, his inaugural address is in here later, but this is essentially the first thing that every president puts out after they become president. And as you can see, it's the same issues from what his website was. Make America safe again. President Trump will take bold action to secure our border and protect American communities. This ends a lot of Biden policies about the border wall. He's going to, about the border, he's going to continue building the wall. He's going to end asylum seeking. No more sanctuaries. He's going to do the deportation operation, which he's been doing, and we've been seeing a lot of people getting arrested and detained, and apparently people are already headed for Guantanamo Bay. Suspending refugee resettlement after communities were forced to house large and unsustainable populations of migrants. This is more of the fear about, the same thing the eating the cat story comes from. And a lot of what you're going to notice as we go through these things like orders and statements is, if it's not obvious enough already, this stuff does not have to be true. Even in something like an executive order, there is no burden of proof or evidence to put something in there, which you would then use to justify what the actual order is. He's saying he's going to use armed forces at the border, designating cartels and other terrorist organizations. This one is alarming to me because a lot of people have pointed out things like, if Israel can use Hamas to label Hamas a terrorist organization and use that as a justification for what they're doing in Palestine, there's technically no reason why Trump would not do that to the cartel to justify invading Mexico. Like, if Trump just lied and said, well, the cartel is a terrorist organization and they run the government there. They obviously don't run the government there, but he could just lie and say that. And then he's going to use this Alien Enemies Act to, or some other, I forgot what it's called, but to invade Mexico. And yeah, death penalty again. A death penalty against illegal migrants who maim and murder Americans, of which there was only like 30. There are only 30 cases in the last year of Americans being killed by undocumented immigrants, which, they want you to think it's like in the tens of thousands, but it's only 30. Everyone knows that illegal immigrants and even documented immigrants are way, way, way less likely to commit crimes, even violent crimes, than your average American. Make America affordable and energy dominant again. This is something that is very common in the Trump cabinet. They all seem to have this belief that if we just will let them drill more oil and gas, then that's going to bring the cost of energy down, and therefore everything is going to become more affordable because everything uses energy. But that totally leaves out the equation that, they're just not gonna lower the price. There is no mechanism by which they need to lower the price if they have more. When people are monopolized like this, supply and demand doesn't apply. Consumer choice, la la la. Trump will declare an energy emergency and use all necessary resources to build critical infrastructure. That sounds good in theory, but it's not going to be government-owned infrastructure. It's going to be basically just handing money to corporations and energy companies. Withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord. All agencies will take emergency measures to reduce the cost of living. Again, another thing you'll see is like this is just full of statements with no action. And the America First trade policy, which you'll see a bit later in here. Drain the swamp. The president will usher a golden age for America by reforming and improving the government bureaucracy to work for the American people. He will freeze bureaucrat hiring, except in essential areas, to end the onslaught of useless and overpaid DEI activists buried into the federal workforce. He will pause burdensome and radical regulations. What is a radical regulation? Not yet in effect that Biden announced. Again, just hilarious. DEI is another thing that you will see all over his executive orders. Of course, DEI is just a replacement for like a slur or the N-word. Like, because they can't get away with just calling somebody the N-word, they call them a DEI hire. So that everyone else like knows what they mean by it, but they just, I didn't say it. Yeah. Anyway, and this bring back American values. The president will establish male and female as biological reality and protect women from radical gender ideology. A rapist defending women, hilarious. So we will move on. There are other actions that I'm skipping over, but they're really just like the naming of all of his cabinet members. So we're going to skip over that. So this was his first action after laying out his priorities. And this is classified as a proclamation, not an order. And as we go through these, you'll begin to understand the difference. But first of all, let's just deal with like what is an executive order. An executive order, if you didn't know, an executive order is not a law. Trump cannot write laws. Laws have to be made by lawmakers in the legislative branch. Trump is the executive branch. That's why it's called an executive order. So when Trump makes an executive order, he is ordering everyone in the executive branch to adhere or operate a certain way. That's why, like, he has the he has the authority to do this flag thing, but like, he does not have the authority to like override something in the Constitution, or even something that is not in the Constitution, but it is like established law, whether it's established law by the judiciary branch or it's like an act or something that was passed in the legislature. So basically, all this is he was ordering the flags to be flown at full mast for Inauguration Day. And then after Inauguration Day, they returned to half staff until 30 days from the day of President Carter's death, which I think was actually today or yesterday. The inaugural address. I was thinking about us watching this like at 2 times speed, because I normally listen to things at 1.5 times speed, but Trump is so slow, stupid, and boring that like I just can't do 1.5. I need to do 2. But we're not going to do that. I'm just going to skim through this, and I highlighted some things. So one of the things, I'll just read some of what he said. But most of this is just FOD and hot air, as I'm sure you know. As we gather today, our government confronts a crisis of trust. For many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens, while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair. Of course, that's funny because Like Trump and his best friends, they are the ones that extract power and wealth from the citizens. It's not like he's literally like, we're the ones doing it and we're going to keep doing it, baby. We now have a government that cannot manage even a simple crisis at home while at the same time stumbling into a continuing catalog of catastrophic events abroad. Trump is continuing to fall into that catalog of catastrophic events abroad. I think just the other day he threatened to invade Greenland, which we'll get into that later. Over the past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history. Hilarious. And more just like, I'm the victim, me, crying, I'm the victim. Oops. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one. That I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed take my life. Just a few months ago in beautiful Pennsylvania, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then and believe even more now that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. Dude, if you didn't see this, I'm not saying like seeing the assassination attempt. If you didn't see the inaugural address, like the room exploded when he said this, which is like, he's just like, it's just feeding the trolls, like feeding the Christian nationalists that like they don't know anything about Jesus, but like nothing gets them excited like a effective like weaponization of God against the people to do things that like Jesus would never allow, you know. He declared Inauguration Day Liberation Day. This alien, he talked about like using this Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to do what he's trying to do at the border, which like 1798. I know he's talked about this before, but like the Constitution is one thing, but like laws, regular ass laws need to expire. We cannot be tapping into laws from 1798. He talks about ending the Green New Deal, revoking an electric vehicle mandate, and says like, okay, now you'll be able to buy the car of your choice, which there is nowhere in the country, anywhere, that you could not buy a gas car or any type of vehicle that you want outside of like emissions regulations, which I mean, he hates that too. But like outside of the regular emissions regulations that have been the same forever, there is no state where like you had to be buying electric vehicles. That's ridiculous. I will immediately begin the overhaul of our trade system to protect American workers and families. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. And he talks about creating the External Revenue Service. So, like, obviously, you know, he's serious about all these tariffs and duties and stuff. And we'll see what comes from that. But yeah, there's a lot more. Not in here, but in this later stuff, there's a lot more about the External Revenue Service, especially in the coming days. He mentioned Doge, which, as we're going through these executive orders on Inauguration Day, I'm not exactly sure at what time or between which two items Elon does the Nazi salute. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents, except for his, of course. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States that there are only two genders, male and female. Hilarious, because like when he says that, people think that like he did it, this is now the law of the land, but like it's basically just like a memo that goes out to his guys. Like, okay, you know, just operate like, okay, guys, we got to change all the forms. Like, we got to get rid of the other thing on the forms, you know. It's like you guys are going to see that like these executive orders and these proclamations, like they're actually pretty weak. You know, everyone in the government and the judges and stuff, they know how to deal with them on both sides. He is going to reinstate service members in the military that objected to getting the COVID vaccine mandate, and he's going to give them full back pay with just whatever money he can find, just money printer, just print more money to give these fucking service members that like just basically just like got a vacation. He's going to give them full back pay. Like in 2017, we will again build the strongest military the world has ever seen. We will measure our success not only by our battles we win, but also by the wars we will end, and perhaps more importantly, the wars we will never get into. Funny again, because like days later, he's threatening to invade Greenland and take action on like Colombia and Mexico. The purpose of our deal and spirit. This is about the Panama Canal. He's saying that like American ships, including the Navy, get overcharged, but I'm pretty sure that is like not true at all. That's like nonsense. He talks about going to Mars and colonizing Mars, and he even uses the phrase "manifest destiny," which that gets the libs and the Republicans real riled up. They love Manifest Destiny. Oh, and him bringing up Manifest Destiny makes this part funny. So he goes on to talk about the history of America, inaccurately, of course. He says our American ancestors turned a small group of colonies on the edge of a vast continent into a mighty republic of the most extraordinary citizens on earth. No one comes close. And then America pushed through thousands of miles of rugged land, of untamed wilderness. They crossed deserts, scaled mountains, braved untold dangers, won the Wild West, ended slavery, which of course he would not have ended slavery, rescued millions from tyranny, lifted billions out of poverty and put them back, harnessed electricity, split the atom, launched mankind into the heavens, put the universe of the human knowledge into the palm of a human hand. If we work together, there is nothing we cannot do and no dream we cannot achieve. He mentions all of this and just kind of skips over the whole genocide part, the whole Native Americans part. Just skips all that. That's pretty much it for the inaugural address. But that was the big hog fest of the day. That's the biggest meetup at the hog trough. So this next one, executive order restoring freedom of speech and ending federal censorship. This is basically just him saying okay, well let's just read it. So, and this is a good example of how these executive orders, they don't have to have any proof of the things that they are saying to justify the action, and even the action sometimes doesn't mean anything. It's basically just like a public statement. There's nothing in here that's going to be happening. But yeah, here we go. So, the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, an amendment essential to the success of our republic, enshrines the right of American people to speak freely in the public square without government interference. And then he says, basically, that over the last 4 years, the previous administration was contacting Meta and other social media companies and saying hey, you got to get this stuff off of here. You got to deal with misinformation, disinformation. It doesn't name COVID in here, but it's all related to COVID and vaccines and stuff. And basically, this is Trump saying we're not going to do that. No one from the federal government should be contacting these companies and saying hey, we need censorship. But none of this is, like I said, and there's nothing in here. It's basically just him getting to publicly say, hey, they did this with no evidence, and then saying, we're not going to do this, even though there's nothing in here, basically. Okay, so the next executive order is called Ending the Weaponization of the Federal Government. This one is basically just another cry fest about, this is the main part. It says, the prior administration and allies throughout the country engaged in an unprecedented third world weaponization of prosecutorial power to upend the democratic process. It targeted individuals who voiced opposition to the prior administration's policies And by prior administration here, he means the first Trump administration. So here he's saying, like, the Biden administration did all of this to me. Voiced opposition to the Trump administration policies with numerous federal investigations and politically motivated funding revocations, which cost Americans access to needed services. He doesn't care about Americans needing these services, by the way. That is just like thrown in there as like fuel. Like, you know, he tried to revoke all federal funding for like Medicaid, food stamps, everything. But so this order is another example of he basically just gets to like publicly cry, and it gets to look like this fancy document, but really it's just everyone has to listen to him cry. Return to in-person work. This is ordering all federal employees to work in person instead of at home, which is honestly kind of like, it's kind of silly, to be honest, because the government and the federal government jobs, even before COVID, they were pretty much like, they were more like, okay, well, you are going to work in person if you have to, but otherwise you're going to work from home. And now he's saying the opposite. He's like, no, everyone's going to work in person unless if you have to work remote. And like, obviously the first way, being able to work remote, is the better way to go, because like you're talking about people with federal government jobs. Like what? All the federal government working people have to live in DC and work in DC? That's ridiculous. If you want the best people to do the job and you don't want like then you would open up the pool to like as many people as possible so that the best, most qualified people can rise to the top. And you would do that by allowing remote work. Next is regulatory freeze pending review. This is sort of like action 1 out of 3 that he basically just tried to shut the entire government down. So basically this is saying you cannot make a new rule without it being reviewed by my administration. It basically says do not propose or issue any rule in any manner, including by sending a rule to the Office of the Federal Register, until a department or agency head appointed and designated by the President after noon on Inauguration Day reviews and approves the rule. And that's basically it. I mean, there's a lot of details in here, but that's what the order is. And then after this, he goes on to do the hiring freeze, which we'll get to. It's the next one. I'm just going to go to it now. So he does this hiring freeze, and then later on he does the like spending freeze. Like, no federal government programs are not getting any money until we review everything and make sure there's no communism or DEI or whatever. And that got shut down very quickly. But these were like parts 1 and 2 of shutting the whole government down until he gets to individually approve everything or replace people with loyalists. And it was basically like you can't make any more rules, you can't hire anybody new, and then the third one, which we'll get to maybe in the next one, is you can't spend any money. There's no money. Your whole shit is shut down. But yeah, in this one it says, I order a freeze on hiring federal civilian employees in the executive branch. If you have a vacant position, you can't fill it. You can't make new positions. He has certain carve-outs for military personnel, immigration enforcement, national security, blah, blah, blah. And carve-outs for a couple other things. Also, he says, like, you can't use contractors to circumvent, like, doing work that you normally couldn't because I said you can't hire people. And also, this has no effect on, like, the Senate nominations and stuff like that. Delivering emergency price relief for American families and defeating the cost of living crisis. Geez, sorry. Okay, this hardworking families today are overwhelmed by the cost of fuel, food, housing, automobiles, medical care, utilities, blah, 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 blah. So we're going back to the energy thing. In particular, the assault on plentiful and reliable American energy through unnecessary and illegal regulatory demands has driven up the cost of transportation and manufacturing. In addition, the unlawful regulatory mandates on companies to effectively eliminate many or most gas-powered vehicles, which that is not true. That is just made up, has resulted in artificial price increases on those popular vehicles to subsidize electric vehicles, which are disfavored by consumers. So, like I said, there are no vehicle mandates. That's nonsense. Second, he's doing this thing again where he says, like, okay, the reason everything is so expensive is because and Biden made energy more expensive. And he thinks if we just let these companies drill, baby, drill, and suck all the oil out, then they're going to lower the prices of using that oil, and the price of everything will go down. But he's just missing the part where they're not going to lower the prices. He also brings up a recent analysis that says, like, 25% of the cost of building a new home is tied up in these regulations and like standards, which obviously there's no source for that. Like, there's no sources in any of these. They're just walls of text. That's basically it. The next executive order is called Putting America First in International Environmental Agreements, and basically it says, Section 1, Purpose. The United States must grow its economy and maintain jobs for its citizens while playing a leadership role in global efforts to protect the environment. The United States' successful track record of advancing both economic and environmental objectives should be a model for other countries. Hilarious, of course. I mean, our country is nothing to be modeled after in that regard. And then he goes on to say, like, basically these international agreements that America is involved with are not beneficial to America. They cost America a lot of money. They're not effective. I mean, Trump doesn't believe in climate change in general. So of course he's going to think that. He thinks that, like, we're just burning all this money for nothing. He actually thinks, like, that for doing this, like, other countries should pay us. He thinks that, like, if we're going to put all this effort into, like, it's going to cost us all this money, these other countries need to pay us back. And then he goes on, the actual order part of it is he orders his administration to, like, end these agreements. He withdraws from the Paris Agreement. He says, withdraw from any other similar pact, accord, or agreement. Don't join any new ones. Cease and revoke any financial commitments that we've made. And then he makes orders to, like, make a plan and report to him anything else. And they're not going to do any other environmental, like, international environmental action until they come up with a plan. Granting pardons. Oh, this is a big one. This is the pardoning of 1,500 January 6th insurrectionists. And the way that he writes about it is just so crazy. So crazy. He writes, and by the way, if it's not obvious, I shouldn't even say he writes, because he doesn't write these. I know that people know that, but, like, these are written by his cabinet members and donors and, like, the Project 2025 people. And then he just signs them. Like, there's a really funny clip of when he is signing some of these. He literally looks at the guy and, like, he grabs the folder and he opens it. And he looks at it for, like, 30 seconds. And then he looks back at the guy and goes, which one is this? Like he doesn't know how to fucking read. But anyway, it said, so I'm going to try and not say he writes. I'm going to say it says. It says, this proclamation ends a grave national injustice that has been perpetrated upon the American people over the last 4 years and begins a process of national reconciliation. Like, he's turning these people into, like, heroes. Acting pursuant to the grant of authority in Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution of the United States, I do hereby, A, commute the sentences of the following individuals convicted of offenses related to the events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021, to time served as of today's date. And there's a short list of people, and then it's B, grant a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to all other individuals convicted of offenses related to events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol on January 6th, 2021. And that is like 15,000 people. Sorry, 1,500 people is what I meant. So, he's talking about, like, he's tough on crime, and he's letting all these lunatics just go. Like, they're out of jail already. And, by the way, one of them is dead. Because, like, one of them got out of jail and just immediately started doing other crimes because he was like, I'm pardoned, I can do whatever I want. And he got shot by the police. Application of Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act to TikTok. So this is the TikTok ban. Actually, no, it's not the TikTok ban. The TikTok ban took place a few days earlier. And basically what this is doing is he's not like undoing the TikTok ban, but he is telling his administration not to take any action on app stores or TikTok for 75 days. So they have 75 days to, I guess, he thinks they're going to sell. And TikTok has been pretty clear that they're not going to sell. So we'll see what happens with that. Withdrawing the United States from the World Health Organization. Yeah, I mean, everyone saw this coming. This part though is a total lie. So he says, the World Health Organization continues to demand unfairly onerous, which that means large, unfair large payments from the United States, far out of proportion with other countries' assessed payments. China, with a population of 1.4 billion, has 300% the population of the United States, yet contributes nearly 90% less to the World Health Organization. That's not true. So he's saying that, like, they're paying a tenth of what we're paying, even though they have 4 times the people. That is just not true. But he withdrew from the WHO. He basically wants to get as much money back as they possibly can, pause all transfer of funds to the WHO, basically fire anybody that has anything to do with working with the WHO, and they're going to try to form their own policy. But this is another great example of, like, he can just say whatever he wants in here. It doesn't have to be true. He doesn't have to provide any evidence. And there I go again. I'm saying he, but it's not him, Next is restoring accountability to policy influencing positions within the federal workforce. Essentially, this is just an executive order that is waving the flag to managers in federal government positions, saying, like, hey, it's okay to fire your employees. You're not going to be held accountable for anything. You're not going to face consequences for firing employees. This is what it reads. A critical aspect of this executive function is the responsibility to maintain professionalism and accountability within the civil service. This accountability is sorely lacking today. Only 41% of civil service supervisors are confident that they can remove an employee who is engaged in insubordination or serious misconduct. Even fewer supervisors, 26%, are confident that they can remove an employee for poor performance. So this is trying to reassure those people that, you don't need a cause or an event to fire these people. You can just fire these people. Which, there's no surprise there. That's kind of fine, Holding former government officials accountable for election interference and improper discourse of sensitive governmental information. Yeah, this is the name of this one is what really gets me once you realize like what's actually in it. Again, it's called holding former government officials accountable for election interference and improper disclosure of sensitive governmental information. That's obviously like, oh, wow. But what you don't know is that like this is Hunter Biden laptop shit. So it reads, Section 1, Purpose. In the closing weeks of the 2020, I can't believe this. Like this is an entire executive order about Hunter Biden's laptop and penis. They're obsessed with his penis. Okay. In the closing weeks of the 2020 presidential campaign, at least 51 former intelligence officials coordinated with the Biden campaign to issue a letter discrediting the report that President Joseph R. Biden's son had abandoned his laptop at a computer repair business. Signatories of the letter falsely suggested that the news story was part of a Russian disinformation campaign. Now, I'm gonna interrupt this for a second. If you don't know about the Hunter Biden laptop story, it is one of the like most significant making something out of nothing that the Republican Party has ever done. So supposedly Hunter Biden leaves his laptop at or multiple laptops, I guess, at this computer repair business that was owned by this Trump supporter. This Trump supporter noticed that it was Hunter Biden. He looks through all the stuff because I guess he left these laptops there and didn't pay and never picked them up and didn't pay for the repairs. So that means that the laptops now belong to the laptop repair place, and they are going to sell them in order to recoup the money that they put into fixing them because they didn't get paid. Supposedly that's the story. So the owner goes through this laptop or these laptops, and what he finds on them is a lot of like not information that is sensitive, but what he definitely finds on them is that is speculated upon. The reason why this is such a big story for the Republicans is because they think that there is information that they are missing. But really, what was on these laptops is a bunch of photos of Hunter Biden partying. He's doing coke. He's hanging out with prostitutes. There are photos and videos of him having sex. And these photos started going around. And they were taken off of social media websites because there's something called revenge porn. Basically, like if somebody posts pornography of you that you don't want out there, that is called revenge porn. And social media sites are not allowed to host revenge porn. It's basically like if your boyfriend, if you broke up with your boyfriend and he took these photos of you that you had sent him in confidence because you were in a relationship with him, if he posted these photos online, he doesn't get to say like, oh, well, you sent me these photos. They belong to me. Even though they're of your naked body exposing you, you know, so that's called revenge porn. So the reason why this story and these links in the story to these photos and supposedly other information, incriminating information that doesn't exist, the reason why that was taken down is because of revenge porn. And these websites have a responsibility not to host revenge porn. And that spiraled into like, why are they hiding this? Why are they censoring this story? But the answer is because like these companies, they need to, I mean, they would be held accountable if they kept those up. But anyway, let's move on. Before being issued, sorry. So now he's saying, so there was this letter that went around that people signed, and they were in the letter, they were suggesting that this news story was part of a Russian disinformation campaign. Before being issued, the letter was sent to the CIA Pre-Publication Classification Review Board, the body typically assigned to formally elevate the sensitive nature of documents prior to publication. Senior CIA officials were made aware of the contents of the letter, and multiple signatories had clearances at the time and maintained ongoing contractual relationships with the CIA. So he's alleging that, these people that are supposed to be in a governmental body that is meant to be not political are taking political action that has political consequences. And then he goes on to say, to remedy these abuses of public trust, this order directs the revocation of any active or security clearances held by the former intelligence officials who had been engaged in misleading and inappropriate political coordination with the 2020 Biden presidential campaign, and 2, John R. Bolton. He goes on to say, or the order goes on to say, sorry, there I am again. The order goes on to say, it is the policy of the United States to ensure that the intelligence community not be engaged in partisan politics or otherwise used by a U.S. political campaign for electioneering purposes. That is the truth, and that is not what happened. B, it is the policy of the United States that individuals who hold government-issued security clearances should not use their clearance status to influence U.S. elections. That is true, and that is also not what happened. It is the policy of the United States that classified information not be publicly disclosed in memoirs, especially those published for personal monetary gain. Section 3, implementation, effective immediately. The Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the Director of the CIA, shall revoke any current and active clearances held by the following individuals. And then it lists 49 people plus John R. Bolton. And then it goes on to say there are 2 other people, but those two people have since passed away. And he calls for those people to submit a report within 90 days to him, detailing anything else that they find out and any suggested disciplinary action, including, is there anyone else that we need to fire? This is a good one. Declaring a national emergency at the southern border of the United States. Yeah, I mean, this one, I'll probably just read the whole thing. So this one says, America's sovereign, and again, a reminder, the things that he puts in these, the things that they put in these, they don't have to be true. They just get to say whatever they want. But this one is pretty dramatic. It begins by saying, America's sovereignty is under attack. Our southern border is overrun by cartels, criminal gangs, known terrorists, human traffickers, smugglers, unvetted military-aged males from foreign adversaries, and illicit narcotics that harm Americans, including America. What? I mean, what does that mean? That harm Americans, including America. Okay. Sorry for coughing. This invasion has caused widespread chaos and suffering in our country over the last 4 years. It has led to the horrific and inexcusable murders of many innocent American citizens, including women and children, at the hands of illegal aliens. Foreign criminal gangs and cartels have begun seizing control of parts of cities, attacking our most vulnerable citizens, and terrorizing Americans beyond the control of law enforcement. That is not true. The idea that illegal aliens are running around killing a bunch of people, controlling cities, is nonsense. And I'm sure that you already know that. But you can actually go to the like U.S. Customs and Border Protection website and see all their crime data, and you will find out that there were less than 30 cases of illegal immigrants murdering somebody last year. So it's very obvious from all that data, and many people have analyzed this from all sides. Natural born U.S. citizens, the average American, commits way more crime than documented or undocumented immigrants. We've known this for years. Cartels control vast territories just south of our southern border, effectively controlling who can and cannot travel to the United States from Mexico. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have tragically died from drug overdoses because of the illicit narcotics that have flowed across the southern border. This assault on the American people and the integrity of America's sovereign borders represents a grave threat to our nation. To protect the security, because of the gravity and emergency of this present danger and imminent threat, it is necessary for the armed forces to take all appropriate action to assist the Department of Homeland Security in obtaining full operational control of the southern border. Keep in mind as we go through this, there is not a single consideration for people that are trying to come into the United States to have a better life for themselves, and they are regular people that are not criminals, and the reason why they are taking this action to cross the border is because of the painfully obvious fact that, like, the legal immigration process just does not work. It's too difficult, and there's no consideration for, okay, how can we? What the thing is like, they don't want immigrants. They don't want legal immigrants either. So that's why they're saying, like, they're all this way, so that you assign the criminality to the race, not to the fact that they're doing this illegal immigration. They want you to assign the criminal aspect to the race. That's what they always want. There's no consideration for the regular person or the regular family, and there's no consideration for the fact that the only difference between a documented immigrant and an undocumented immigrant is paperwork, and what can we do to make it easier for them to do that paperwork so that people can safely enter the country. There's no consideration for that at all. To protect the security and safety of the United States citizens, to protect each of the states against invasion, and to uphold my duty to take care of the law, to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, it is my responsibility as president to ensure the illegal entry of aliens into the United States via the southern border be immediately and entirely stopped. Another thing is that when people look up, like, how many illegal immigrants came into the country, first of all, those numbers are unreliable. And second of all, people imagine that, like, all of those people are crossing the southern border. Like, there's literally just a constant flow of people all across every foot of the border, that the border control cannot possibly stop them. The truth is that, like, 9 out of 10 of the people that come into this country illegally, they are visa overstayers. They came into the country with paperwork legally. They're allowed to be here for a vacation or work or whatever, and then they just don't leave. They overstay, or they don't report leaving, and they did leave. So basically, like, they are not in the country, but we think that they are, and that inflates the quote-unquote illegal immigrant numbers. It goes on to say, As commander-in-chief, I have no more solemn duty than to protect the American people. And then it's in all caps. It says this. In all caps, it says, "Now therefore I, Donald J. Trump, hereby declare that a national emergency exists at the southern border of the United States to provide additional authority to the Department of Defense to support the federal government's response to the emergency at the southern border. I hereby declare that this emergency requires use of the armed forces." And he makes the following directions. Section 1 is he directs the Department of Defense and each relevant military department, as appropriate and consistent with the law, they can order as many units as many units of the armed forces as they decide are necessary to support the activities of the Homeland Security to obtain complete operational control of the southern border of the United States. They can further take all appropriate action to facilitate the operational needs of the Secretary of Homeland Security along the southern border, including through a provision of appropriate detention space, transportation, including aircraft, and other logistics services in support of civilian-controlled law enforcement operations. So he's saying, like, you can have as many people as you need, as many resources as you need, as much money as you need to transport people, to build facilities and camps. Section 2, additional physical barriers. They're going to keep building the wall. That's basically what this one is. Unmanned aerial systems. The Secretary of Transportation and the Federal Communications Commission shall consider waiving all applicable Federal Aviation Administration and Federal Communication Commission regulations or policies, respectively, that restrict the Department of Homeland Security's ability to counter unmanned aerial systems within 5 miles of the southern border. So this is like, he's saying, like, okay, the cartel is using drones to monitor where they can cross and cannot cross. And he is saying, like, we need to get rid of these laws and regulations about this airspace so that the military can do whatever is necessary to stop them. This one is just like saying, okay, yeah, go ahead and review the current policies, see if there's anything we're missing. He revoked a executive order that Biden made called Termination of Emergency with respect to the southern border of the United States and redirection of funds diverted to border wall construction. So basically, this is an order that Biden made saying, like, okay, we're done building Trump's wall and we're done with this emergency at the border, because Trump had declared an emergency at the border in the prior administration, his first presidency. And this is Trump revoking the order that stopped the first one and saying, like, okay, yep, we're building the wall again. And then there are reporting requirements asking, Secretary of Defense and other people to report to him shortly so that they can do more of this nonsense. This next one is a memorandum to resolve the backlog of security clearances for Executive Office of the President personnel. Basically, what this is saying is Trump and his team were not happy with the security clearances teams in the agencies saying, hey, it's going to take a few days for us to get everybody their clearances. It's just how it is. And they were not happy with that, and this is basically just yelling and crying, saying, no, we need to do it faster. And then, I think this is the last one we're going to do for today, but I think we are about halfway through the Inauguration Day. This all happened in one day, by the way, and even more. So we will catch up over time. Obviously, a lot happens the first day, and these eventually slow down. So, we will get caught up. But right now, it is the 29th, I think, and we're still on Inauguration Day, so January 20th. So this is the America First trade policy. And it's the main thing in the purpose and background is that, he's basically saying, like, we previously were on a path toward a trade or eliminating trade deficits. And then he's like, says Biden came in and inflated everything. So basically, this is the same thing every president would say. But I'll read it to you. I'll just read the key parts. So he is instructing people to investigate the causes of our country's large and persistent annual trade deficits in goods, as well as the economic and national security implications and risks resulting from such deficits. He's saying, like, having such a huge trade deficit does not put us in a good position as far as trading with the rest of the world. So he's asking them to investigate that and recommend appropriate measures such as a global supplementation tariff or other policies to remedy such deficits. And then he's commanding people to investigate the feasibility of establishing and recommending the best methods for designing, building, and implementing an external revenue service to collect tariffs, duties, and other foreign trade-related revenues. So, you heard him earlier in the inaugural address. He's saying, like, instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we're going to tax other countries to enrich our citizens. So, there's just no way that taxes for the average person are going to go down. They'll probably go down for corporations and all of his rich buddies. But the idea that he's going to lower the average person's taxes is ridiculous. And I mean, no conservative has ever done that. Ever, really. I know that's I know people hear those kinds of statements and they go like, what? That just can't be right. But look into it yourself. Like another one that people hear and they go, no, that just can't be right, is that, like, I can't remember exactly what number of presidencies it is, but, like, there's a point where, like, the federal government has created, in the past whatever years, they have created 51 million jobs. And 50 of the 51 million were created under Democratic leadership. And only around 1 of the 51 million were created under Republican leadership. And people hear that and they go, no, that just can't be right. It's absolutely right. He's asking people to undertake a review of and identify any unfair trade practices by other countries and recommend appropriate actions to remedy those practices. Review existing United States trade agreements and sectoral trade agreements and recommend any revisions. So a lot of this is just like, hey, look at every single trade agreement that we have and find out how we can extort more money out of the other country. Investigate whether any foreign country subjects United States citizens or corporations to discriminatory or extraterritorial taxes. Review the impact of all trade agreements, including the World Trade Organization Agreement on Governmental Procurement, and shall make recommendations to ensure that such agreements are being implemented in a manner that favors domestic workers and manufacturers, not foreign nations. Section 3 is a lot about China. The United States Trade Representative shall assess the May 14, 2024 report entitled 4-Year Review of Actions Taken in Section 301 Investigation China's Acts, Policies, and Practices Related to Technology Transfer, Intellectual Property, and Innovation, and consider potential additional tariff modifications as needed, particularly with respect to industrial supply chains and circumvent through third countries, including an updated estimate of the costs imposed by any unfair trade practices. So one thing that I think is funny about this is like the people that you see on Trump's team, they are not smart enough to do this. Like they're not. Investigate other acts, policies, and practices by the People's Republic of China that may be unreasonable or discriminatory and that may burden or restrict United States commerce, and shall make recommendations regarding appropriate responsive actions. In here, they go on to talk about things like intellectual property and patents. Sorry. One thing that you guys should know about China's economy, if you don't know this already, China does not let their country get burdened down by toxic and nonsense patents and intellectual property claims. Like, you do not get to patent medicine. Like, if you the way it works in the United States is if you put a bunch of research into funding like the development of a medicine and it turns out to be a breakthrough, the way it works in the United States is you have so many years where you are the only one that is allowed to patent or to make that medicine. No one else can make that medicine. And so you can just charge whatever the fuck you want. And especially if it's a life-saving medicine, oh my God, you just hit the jackpot. But in China, and then, by the way, when that time is up and people are supposed to be allowed to make generics, they have ways to get around that. Like for inhalers, they can just change the mouthpiece a little bit, and then they can make another patent, and then suddenly no one else is allowed to make that medicine, even if it's got the old mouthpiece or whatever. But in China, the research to develop these new medicines is publicly funded. So the government or these organizations, they receive money to do that kind of research. And then, like, when they come up with something, they don't get to just monopolize it. They instead, like, the government comes in and says, like, okay, well, how cheap can we make it? Can we make it more affordable? Can we make it so affordable that the government will just cover the cost because we cover people's health care anyway over here? So, and another thing is, like, things that are not like medicine or life-saving, like, let's say, like, electronics. If there's an American company and they engineer a camera, and then they're going to have that camera made in China, or really a lot of these nations overseas where it's less expensive to manufacture things, they know that they're going to take that camera and reverse engineer it so that they can make a similar product and then put it on the market for less money. And it's that they know, every single company that has things made in China, they know that they're going to do this. It is literally part of the deal. Yeah, I don't see a reason to read a lot of this. You know what it is. It's basically just like, hey, look at every single trade agreement that we have going on, especially with China, and find out how we can get a better deal, how we can extort more money out of the country that is trading with us. And if they really try to do that, it's going to be disastrous. People are just not going to trade with us. If you tell these people, like, hey, you know, we've had this arrangement for a long time, and now, guess what, man? It's over. Big Daddy is here, and I'm swinging my big dick around, and guess what? You're going to have to pay us 20% just to take this nonsense into the country. That's, of course, not how tariffs work, but that's how they think tariffs work. And so if Trump is going to implement some other duty or foreign tax that is like different from what a regular tariff is, if he's going to invent something entirely new that says, like, okay, well, when a company imports your products, you or your government have to pay this fee to our government. It's not like a tariff where like the importer has to pay it. If he tries to do something like that, it's just they're just gonna stop. Like, people don't realize how much stuff that we don't make here. So I think that's gonna be it for this. We'll continue. Hopefully, I'm able to do the rest of Inauguration Day soon. And then we're going to start getting caught up. But, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helps you understand exactly what's going on, and not through like a media lens, not through the press secretary, which, by the way, if you have not seen Trump's press secretary, I mean, she is a bitch. Like, you gotta see this. She was today. She was just yelling. She's literally going like, she's literally sounding like this. She sounds like, well, if you'd pay attention and read the press briefing, you would know that. And she wears this fake gold cross, like a giant fake gold cross. And she's 27 years old, and she's like the dumbest looking blonde. And she has all this face and plastic and cosmetic surgery, and she's married to a 60-year-old. Anyway, yeah, that's going to be it. Please subscribe and comment and like. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a fantastic day. Be good to your friends and family.